and she laid a table like he had never seen. For that time the ranch paid its bills. The reputation of Box Creek grew, and they were booked steady all those years, 24 people every week. And Mac grew up with them from when he was 10, answering the same questions about horseshoes and hay. And can I feed this horse an apple without him biting me? A horse on a dude ranch eats a lot of apples. Bonnie's family came out from Chapel Hill, where her mother was a professor of political science, and he gave her the same horse every year, Rusty, a benevolent roan who was golden once a day, if the sun was right. Bonnie was a strong athlete and played soccer in college, but Mac avoided her, as he did all the guests, easily. Many weeks the guests had romances with other guests, intrigues afoot, and Mac had plenty of work grooming horses when the day ended, while everyone showered in the big house and in the 2 cottages, and then lined up for Amarantha's astounding buffet. Plus, his father had spoken to him after the 3rd summer. It was obvious the way the kids hung out by the rail fence when Mac was shoeing a horse or working the tack. They'd followed him around, the boys and the girls, and they wanted to know about him. His father called him into the big house, and they sat in the small front office that Sawyer Day used the 2 days a week he came out to do the books, and his father swiveled the oak chair to Mac, and they talked. The room was cloistered by the varnished pine shelves full of books, his father's collection of Zane Grey and Jack London, and Western history, and a beaten tin umbrella stand full of rolled maps. These kids look up to you, his father said. I don't know, Mac said. He sat on the dark leather hassock, orphaned from its long-lost chair. Yes, you do. They should look up to you. You're a good hand. They're not used to this. All they've got is their car and the junior prom. You're an exotic item, Mac. Okay, the boy said. Well, what we are to these people is a sort of cliche. They come out here to taste this, and it's good for all of us. But these girls, some of them are going to fall for you, you big, strong cowboy. His father tapped Mac's knee with his 2 fingers. Come on, you can look at me. I know you're a good kid. Some of these gals from New York even come after your old man, a little fling out west for a week. You want to be a cliche? No, sir, Mac said, I don't. You need me to recount the history of Sheridan the racehorse? No, sir, please. His father smiled. Have you recovered from that lesson? He'd taken the boy to witness their only thoroughbred, Sheridan, at stud, when Mac was 9 years old. No, sir, Mac said truly, no one could. Mac went on and repeated what his father had said that day. That's enough of the birds and bees for one boy. Well, good, his father said. We won't be cliches then. That's all. I expect you know what to do. Talk the day with these kids and riding and horses and weather, and then send them back to supper. Don't walk with them or have them out near the bunkhouse. My eyes are right here. I know you know what to do. I don't want this business we're in to hurt you, boy. I love you and I love this place. Do you know it? Yes, sir, I do. Show me your hands. Mac leaned and held his hands out and then turned them over. They'd always done this, a show of hands. His father looked him over. Nails, cuticles, knuckles, palms. You could tell a good ranch hand by the number of nicks. The fewer the better the ranch hand. And as the years passed, Mac's hands cleared up. His father squeezed his hands now and said, well, that's enough of that. Quite a talk for the old homestead. You go, get to work. And he did the work on a long day ranch schedule. On Thursday nights he ran the one late night campfire, all those chocolate crackers, and then the spooky story. He had started it when he was 13. The story he'd heard part of from his own dad about Hiram, broken-hearted and half-mad, who still roamed the woods near here, living in rotten logs and following campers in his search for a beating heart. At night, when the fishermen's campfires would shrink down to wavering coals, Hiram would sneak into the camps and reach into the tents and put his head against the campers' chests to try to hear again the thumping of a heart. His own had stopped so long ago. Mac would let the big ranch fire dwindle and collapse and lower his voice as he told the episodes. Hiram's heart had been broken by his own true love when one night he came home, he came calling and saw her through the lighted window in the arms of another man. A fisherman? Some kid would ask. Not much of one, Mac would say, but maybe. And Hiram turned and fled that place and went into the woods, these woods, forever. Half the kids would already be in their pajamas and robes, sitting legs up and arms folded in the canvas camp chairs, listening. They'd all heard of Hiram from last week or from last summer, and his legend was part of the Box Creek Ranch lore now. Mac would hold out his hand like a claw and say how Hiram only wanted human contact. His loneliness was larger than Wyoming. He only wanted them to hear a beating heart, but he was misunderstood and called a cannibal, though there was never any proof of that. I think he was a cannibal, some boy would say. He ate the campers and cooked them over the fire, and they never came back. Mac would let this remark hang in the air. Oh, he's out there, Mac would say, indicating the circle of darkness around them all. And now we know for sure that he's misunderstood. If the children got too frightened, which is why they came every week, Mac would back up and tell about Hiram's younger days working with wild geese and his travels in the cities which did not agree with him. Then as the hour turned, Mac would stand and stir the fire pit, and as the cinders schooled up red, he would say, Hiram listens for a beating heart. Can you hear your beating heart? The night would glow with silence and the popping of the fire. Now scoot, we're going to ride horses tomorrow, and I don't want you falling asleep. It was a favorite time for him, watching the young people scurry back to the cabin's lit porches. They tried not to run, but they sometimes ran. It was his first love, the ranch, and he loved it night and day. Then came his second. Okay, then there's just this last page. The year he was 17, Mac took the weekly ridge ride with all the kids, 9 riders, winding up the line shack trail to the aspen draws that led to the mountaintop. He rode his horse Copper Bob, the captain. There were 2 old log cabins along the way, slumped and fallen in, new trees thrusting through the collapsed roof beams. They'd always stopped and took stagey pictures with the young people pretending to knock at the doorway or looking out the ancient window frames. Sometimes they dug around for old cans or bottles, and they made up stories about the lonely men who lived here, how they had had a dog or played cards all winter. One of the young riders would always say, maybe this is where Hiram lived, and Mac would explain that he never slept in the same place twice. He was always wandering and without a home. The cabins always sobered Mac, because he knew how hard such lives would have been. Over the years he found and kept purple medicine bottles and boot buckles from the old places. Bonnie was a good rider, and Rusty knew her, and they liked to lead the train through the gloomy tree shade. The horses stepped quietly up the grassy slopes, past the wildflowers, along the faint trail they'd walked 100 times, their tails swishing silently, timed to the gate. Mac watched the girl float in her saddle at the top of the easy parade. This was the golden center of Mac's life. All these fine animals geared right and taking the bobbing children up every step farther from home than they had ever been. Mac saw a shadow in the hillside and knew what it was in a second. He sat up and snugged his reins from where he rode behind the children. When the bear sat up in the tall June grass at the top of the draw, Mac thought he saw him rub his eyes like a man might in disbelief. It was a luxurious black bear, and he didn't stand or look alarmed. He sat and looked into the face of the first horse. Mac had known moments like this, and usually something happened very fast as the surprises doubled. Rusty stopped short without rearing, but Vonnie went over the front of the saddle and fell. Mac felt something open in him. All the horses stopped, veterans. Mac knew that when Rusty turned, riderless, all the horses would turn and start stepping down. He loved that they knew not to run. They never ran, even in the last flat stretch near the ranch yard, even when the tourists urged them with their heels or reins or any cowboy moves they'd seen in films for years on end. Mac was moving. He clucked and Copper Bob eyed the bear and still approached.